Belarus is forming a new air assault brigade near the Ukrainian border. Western analysts are predicting a new escalation in the winter following mobilization in Russia. Ukrainian intelligence has explained whether a new threat to the Kyiv and Chernihiv regions is possible, and if so, when. More on all of this in the following report. This is TSAUA News. I'm Alina Turishin. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button, and let's get started. Is Russia preparing a new offensive on the Kyiv and Chernihiv regions? Deputy Chief of the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense, Major General Vadim Skibitsky, in an interview with RBC Ukraine, assessed such a scenario as theoretically possible, but at the moment, Ukrainian intelligence does not see the main thing, neither a sufficient Russian grouping nor signs of its preparation for an offensive operation from the north. At the same time, the situation could change after a possible new mobilization in Russia. According to the Duor's assessment, if the Kremlin makes such a decision, it will take the Russian army several months to form and prepare a new strike group. Ukrainian intelligence draws attention to the experience of 2022. After the mobilization was announced in the fall, it took the Russians several months before the mobilized units were able to fully join the combat operations. Therefore, under a scenario favorable to the Kremlin, a new powerful group in the northern direction could appear closer to the beginning of 2027. And it is precisely then that the risk of a new offensive on the Chernihiv and Kyiv regions may increase. However, there are currently no grounds to speak of immediate preparations for such a strike. Ukrainian intelligence has not yet recorded the presence of Russian troops necessary for a large-scale offensive from the north. It also became known that Belarus has begun forming a new air assault brigade near the Ukrainian border. The creation of the unit was announced by the commander of the Special Operations Forces of the Belarusian Army, Alexander Ilnyukevich, on the air of the Belarusian Ministry of Defense TV channel. According to him, the formation of the brigade has already begun. Currently, one battalion has been created and another is planned to be formed by the end of the year. In parallel, units for artillery, air defense, reconnaissance, and combat support are being staffed. The officer corps has already been appointed, and a portion of the new brigade's military units has been formed. The new formation is planned to be stationed near Gomel, approximately 40 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Russia may be preparing for a new wave of mobilization as early as this autumn. Increasingly, signals indicate that the Kremlin may delay this decision until after the September State Duma elections. Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated in recent weeks that Russia is preparing for a new large-scale recruitment of people. On July 25th, the president reported that Ukrainian intelligence has reports on Russian plans for the autumn and that Putin is preparing conditions for expanding mobilization. And on August 11th, Zelensky stated that according to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia is preparing for mobilization in the autumn, immediately after the parliamentary elections. The president emphasized that this information comes from internal Russian documents obtained by the Ukrainian side. Also, on July 25th, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukrainian intelligence has data on Russia's preparations to involve about 30,000 more DPRK troops. And already in August, the president spoke about a possible increase of this contingent to 50,000 North Korean soldiers. Moreover, military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow continues to expand. According to Reuters, there were even reports this summer of a North Korean missile unit being transferred to Russia, about 90 soldiers with launchers and ballistic missiles. A new mobilization is extremely unpopular in Russia, and it is important for the Kremlin not to create additional discontent before the voting. This scenario is also considered by analysts who note that Moscow is trying to avoid repeating the large-scale mobilization of 2022 for as long as possible. The New York Times, citing Western officials and analysts, writes that Russia may try to intensify its offensive against Ukraine as early as this winter. According to their estimates, the Kremlin may take advantage of the seasonal strain on the Ukrainian energy system and a possible shortage of air defense assets to simultaneously intensify strikes on civilian infrastructure and pressure on Ukrainian positions. Currently, the publication writes, there are no signs that Putin is ready to wind down the war. On the contrary, Moscow continues to insist on maximalist demands, in particular on establishing full control over the Donbass. Western analysts suggest that if Russia cannot achieve this goal, the likelihood of serious negotiations may increase. At the same time, Europe is already preparing for a possible diplomatic process. France, Germany, and Great Britain are coordinating their positions so that future agreements are not reached without the participation of Ukraine and European allies. The story about the possible arrival of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner is already turning into a diplomatic soap opera. Reports about their trip to Kyiv and Moscow are not appearing for the first time. Back in late July, it was reported that American representatives might come to Kyiv in the second half of August, but there was no specific date at that time. At the beginning of August, information appeared about a possible trip to both Kyiv and Moscow, but this route was never officially confirmed either. Now Moscow is again declaring its readiness to receive Witkoff and Kushner. Lavrov says that if they come, Putin is ready to receive them, but the Kremlin wants to know exactly what they are coming with, that is, what specific proposals the Americans will have. A possible first visit by Witkoff and Kushner to Kyiv was also discussed, particularly against the backdrop of Ukraine's Independence Day. But as of August 18th, the American side has not definitively confirmed that the trip will take place. An American official informed Suspilne about this. On August 11th, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukraine had already submitted its proposals for ending the war to the American negotiators. According to him, Washington can play a key role, in particular by strengthening Ukrainian air defense and pressuring Russia to end the war. At the same time, Zelensky expects more active work from American representatives Witkoff and Kushner in resuming the negotiation process. But Kyiv simultaneously emphasizes negotiations must not turn into an agreement at the expense of Ukraine. Meanwhile, former Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov, despite his resignation, continues to speak about the war and the future of Ukrainian defense. In an interview with Ukrainska Pravda, he warned, extremely difficult times, many challenges and tough decisions lie ahead for Ukraine. But in his conviction, Russia can be stopped. Fedorov predicts, at a certain point, the pressure on Russia will become so strong that the question will no longer be about continuing the war, but about the very existence of the Russian regime. And then, he believes the Kremlin will be forced to stop without ever having achieved its strategic goals. According to his logic, Russia will have to face a choice. Either continue the war at the cost of ever-increasing resources, or stop when the system itself is under threat. At the same time, Fedorov spoke a lot about how exactly Ukraine should conduct this war. One of the main emphases is on technological superiority and the scaling of unmanned systems. He specifically identified the development of technology as one of the key ways to compensate for Russia's advantage in human resources. Fedorov also spoke separately about the need to change the very approach to waging war, to implement new technologies faster, restructure the defense procurement system, and bet on modern means of destruction. His position essentially boils down to one thing: Ukraine should not try to defeat Russia by its rules with the number of people, tanks, or artillery. The advantage must be created through technology, speed, and the scale of production. Fedorov believes that with the right strategy, Russia can be brought to a point where continuing the war becomes more dangerous for it than ending it. And what do you think? How will events on the front line unfold this autumn? Write your thoughts in the comments. Stay with TSA News to keep up with the most important information. And with that, we've reached the end of today's segment. I really hope you found this helpful and informative. Please do take excellent care of yourselves out there. Stay safe and keep looking after your well-being. It has been a pleasure spending this time with you, and I truly appreciate you tuning in. Don't go anywhere, because we have so much more exciting content coming your way very soon. I'm really looking forward to catching up with you again in the next episodes. See you then.